My House of Horrors Chapter 241 to 250. The room was so quiet that even the two who loved to comment on other people's stories shut their mouths. The atmosphere at the table was weird. The 10 black robes looked at each other like they were communicating with their eyes. If that's not enough, I have other stories. Chen Ge was trying to buy time for Zhongya. He was not interested in the other members. He only had one goal that day, and that was to capture the person who looked like Zhu Shu. You have other stories to tell. The members at the table became even more silent. The man on the right scratched his head and turned to the 5th person on the left. Number 5, is this new member's story all real? The others also turned to the most mysterious no. 5. The black robe moved slightly, and number 5's neutral voice came from under the mask. I can't see any signs of lying from him. The 5 ghost stories were all real experiences. What kind of exciting life was that? Looks like we'll have to reevaluate. The man on the left moved his eyes to the other 3 new members. Your stories are interesting as well, but unfortunately, we can only keep 3 of you. He placed his left hand on the table and raised one finger. The second round of voting had begun. The others soon made their choice, and 6 of them raised one finger. More than half of the votes have been cast. The man on the left turned to no. 1. I'm sorry, number 1. You can leave now. Leave. Number 1 panicked. He wanted to say something, but he was stopped by the man on the left. You'll have another chance next Wednesday. The suspicious number 1 was ushered out of the room. The man in the bird mask had been waiting for a long time. When he realized it was not Chen Ge, he was surprised. Follow me. The man led number 1 away and closed the door. When the anti-theft door closed, the first man on the left said the second half of the sentence, that is, if you can survive until next Wednesday. Just as he finished, a scream came from the corridor, and then there was the sound of something falling. Number 2's legs were shaking. 4 people had chosen him. If there had been 2 more votes, he would have been the one walking out now. Don't be afraid, the new member is just in a different form. The voice of the person on the left softened. Welcome to the Ghost Stories Society. Your numbers are 11, 12, and 13. Chen Ge was the last to arrive. His number was 13. The color of blood in the shadow behind him became more and more obvious. Chen Ge, who had survived a crisis, slowly relaxed. The Society of Strange Tales was the 3rd Sick Hall's hidden mission, and it might be related to the world behind the door. The reward for this mission might be Meng Nan's main persona, a red specter who could control the door. I have a question. The woman's number was 12. Her emotions did not fluctuate too much. The flyer says that I can find a way to relieve my pain here. What should I do to relieve my pain? Don't worry, everyone here was once in pain. Everyone is a patient, and the Society of Strange Tales was established to alleviate everyone's pain and complete salvation. The man on the right turned to look at the girl in the middle. After you've told your 3 real ghost stories, we will help you based on your situation. Chen Ge listened quietly. He had thought that the Society of Strange Tales was just a group of madmen playing with themselves, but they had found a deeper meaning for the society. How can a real ghost story happen so easily? When the woman said that, she glanced at Chen Ge with some caution. Ghost stories have always existed, but you just haven't encountered them, the man continued. The man continued, every word on the flyer is true. In fact, many members have been redeemed here. There was once a member who was abused by her adoptive father when she was young. She was often whipped and forced into the water, which caused her to be particularly afraid of water. Later, with our treatment, her illness was finally cured, and she no longer suffered from her fear of water. Quote, how did you cure her? Very simple. We soaked her adoptive father in water and had her personally destroy her fear. That's it. It's that simple. Every one of us is a patient, but we have different causes and conditions, so when the time comes, we will tailor a solution for you. The voice of the man on the right sounded calm and confident. The face under the mask must be very mature. The conditions are the same. As long as you can tell us 3 real ghost stories, you can make one request from us, or you can choose to leave. The man laughed and said, in what he thought was a joke, a real departure. 3 ghost stories, huh? The woman lowered her head to think. Chen Ge listened to their conversation, and the more he listened, the more he felt that something was wrong. What kind of treatment is this? This is murder. Only a lunatic could come up with such a crazy treatment method. Chen Ge's eyes scanned the people around the table. The patients who escaped from the third sick hall were probably among them. The devil from room 10 and Wu Fei from room 9 were probably the founders of the Society of Strange Tales. They were patients themselves, and the pain they had suffered in room 10 was written all over it. No one could understand that feeling better than them. The pain that medicine could not cure, they would treat it themselves, using the method of a madman to save the madman. Every new member can ask a question. The man turned to number 2 and Chen Ge. Which one of you wants to go first? I've run into some trouble recently, and I'm being hunted. After number 2 said this, he raised his head and glanced at the crowd. No one had any reaction, as if this was something that they were used to. I've roughly guessed your problem. You're another person who has no other way out. The man on the left leaned against the back of the chair. We won't help you solve your problem, and we don't have that ability, but the society can take you in, perhaps forever. Rookie number 2 nodded, seemingly a little disappointed. Everyone's eyes turned back to Chen Ge. What's your question? My question is simple. Chen Ge felt the chill on his back. He did not expect the combination of the monster behind the door and the patients from the third sick hall would create something like this. After thinking about it for a long time, he said directly, I want to know who the chairperson is. The chairperson. The black robes on both sides of the table were silent again. They looked at each other, and it was the first man on the left who spoke. Let's change the question. You can't say. The more the man refused to say, the more curious Chen Ge became. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. You also don't know who the chairperson is. Chen Ge thought he could find Wu Fei or patient 10 through this question, but he did not expect to get such an answer. Everyone wears a mask and the same black robe. Sometimes, even if the person inside is different, no one will be able to tell. The person on the left pointed at himself. I'm number 1. Here, the number is more important than the name. If you don't want to be replaced, you'd better be careful. He was talking to the new woman. The woman had a unique voice, and her story revealed her husband's surname and many details about her life. As long as one was willing to investigate, they would be able to find her. When Chen Ge heard her voice earlier, he confirmed her identity immediately. Actually, Chen Ge did not expect the popular podcaster at Midnight Radio to be such a person. There are no other rules in the society. We just need to prepare enough ghost stories. The man's voice was cold. After the three of you finish your stories, we will try our best to fulfill your request. It will be up to you to decide whether to stay or leave. Number 1 has said everything that needs to be said. The man on the right snapped his fingers. There will be a meal. After that, you can leave. Meal. Chen Ge was confused, but he did not ask. Silence returned to the room, and no one spoke. After almost half an hour, the sound of footsteps came from the corridor. The door was pushed open. There were several scratches on the birdman's neck. There was an accident. It might take some time. There's no need to rush. After all, there's still a long time before dawn. The man on the right looked at the three newcomers. You might not be used to it. After all, this is your first time. You'll get used to it in the future. Once the man said that, number 10, who liked Chen Ge's mask, said, if you really can't wait, you can leave first. Hearing that, the other black robes did not say anything, like they did not understand why he would say that. I'll pass on the meal. I need to find a new ghost story as soon as possible. Rookie number 2 was probably the most ordinary of them all. He was not used to dealing with this bunch of lunatics. If it wasn't to evade capture, he would never have come to such a place. The first man on the left and right did not speak. He only waved his hand. Their eyes were focused on number 10. It seemed like there was something wrong with number 10 today. Chen Ge was very curious about the Society of Strange Tales. The red blood vessels in his shadow would be done in another minute or two. He was reluctant to leave now. In his opinion, it was rare for everyone to gather together, so it was a good opportunity to capture them all in one fell swoop. The guild master was among those 10 people, and even they didn't know who the guild master was. At this time, the easiest way to deal with it was to kill all 10 of them. Goodbye. See you next Wednesday. Rookie number 2 hurriedly walked out. The bird-beak man was still standing at the door. His eyes stared straight at him as if he was sizing up a piece of food. Are you two leaving too? Chen asked Chen Ge and the woman. I'm very curious about the food here. The woman's voice changed. She sounded excited. I'll stay. The sound of running came from the corridor. Rookie number 2 was probably going to take the elevator to leave. I have something urgent to attend to. I'll see you next Wednesday. Chen Ge walked out from the room. When he passed the bird-beak man, he smelled a light scent of blood. I really didn't expect you to walk out alive. There was shock and confusion in the bird-beak man's voice. There will be more things that you can't even imagine in the future. Chen Ge smiled at him. The human skin mask that he had made looked very scary. The bird-beak man did not reply immediately. After Chen Ge walked away, he grumbled, for some reason, I don't have that much anticipation. Rookie number 2 with the pig mask ran to the elevator. His fingers pressed the button madly, and the number on the screen started to change. Why is it so slow? He felt like he was suffocating. Compared to those madmen, the scariest thing that he had seen in his life was not even worth mentioning. Especially the 4th rookie, just what kind of abyss of suffering was he living in? No, I need to leave as soon as possible. The elevator rose but stopped at the 23rd floor. After a long time, the number on the screen changed to 24 feet, like there was a long distance between the 23rd and the 24th floor. Number 2 rushed into the elevator. He did not care whether there was anyone behind him or not. He pressed the button to close the door. When the silver door was about to close, a hand pressed on the door, and Chen Ge in the human skin mask walked in. Let's go together. Number 2's Adam's apple trembled. He wanted to reject, but he did not have the courage. Okay. Pressing the button for the 1st floor, Chen Ge stood at the elevator door. When the door completely closed, he turned to look at number 2. Will you come again next Wednesday? I don't know. If I come across a new ghost story, I'll come. Number 2's tone was stiff. He did not want to talk to this person before him. So, that's what you're worried about. Chen Ge smiled. I know many ghost stories. Do you want me to share one with you? You're really willing to share one with me? A spark of hope rose in number 2's heart. If Chen Ge was willing to tell him a ghost story, then he only needed to find one and he could ask the Society of Strange Tales for help. Of course. Chen Ge turned around. The shadow behind him pulsed with blood vessels like a blood swan spreading its wings. After all, you're the main character of my ghost story. Thick black hair crawled out from Chen Ge's shadow and covered the whole elevator. A woman in a bright red dress leaned on Chen Ge's shoulder. The pale face was completely twisted from hatred. Zhongya, there was nowhere to run in the enclosed elevator. Chen Ge even pulled off number 2's mask and clamped his hand over his mouth. The number on the screen kept decreasing, and time seemed to be moving in slow motion. When the number reached 1, the elevator doors slowly opened, and a man with a terrified expression collapsed in the corner. His heart was still beating, but other than fear, there was no other expression on his face. Upon closer inspection, one could see that his pupils were like broken glass balls, and blood was leaking out. Chen Ge moved Zhu Shu out of the elevator. Zhongya leaned behind him, playing with the new toy in her hands. After moving Zhu Shu out of the elevator, Chen Ge did not leave. He returned to the elevator. Zhongya followed closely behind him. It's rare for you to come out for some fresh air. How about we go and do something big? Chen Ge looked at Zhongya behind him. This red specter appeared to have grown stronger. Her clothes looked like they were sewn together with red threads, and it felt very real. Zhongya kept her head lowered. She was very close to Chen Ge. Her fluttering black hair occasionally brushed past Chen Ge's arm, and the thing that looked like blood vessels at the hem of her dress seemed to be trying to crawl into Chen Ge's body. The scene before him was quite scary. Chen Ge did not expect Zhongya to change so much. Actually, when he covered Zhu Shu's mouth, the black phone had already given him a notification. Zhongya's affection level toward him had broken through to uncontrollable affection, and she was very close to the next level. The affection level was like a water tank that was about to overflow. Zhang Ya's small movements seemed to be expressing her feelings. Do you like ghosts? If you don't, then I'll turn everyone that you like into a ghost, including yourself. The blood vessels and black hair curled around Chen Ge's joints, and Chen Ge felt a chill run down his spine. He turned back to look at Zhang Ya, but Zhang Ya still acted like she did not know anything. She was just following behind him. I can feel a murderous intent. I need to get her to move her attention. Chen Ge pressed the button for the 23rd floor. He decided to go to the 24th floor. Actually, he did not want to be so rash, but he had a problem. Normally, after Zhang Ya left his shadow, she would voluntarily return, but this time, Zhang Ya did not show any intention of returning at all. He was worried that if he did not find something for Zhang Ya to do, she would make a move on him. Love and hate were both extreme emotions. The way Zhang Ya looked at him was strange, like she was considering whether to turn him into a doll or not. After all, that way, they could be together forever. The silver elevator door slowly closed, and the hair on the back of Chen Ge's neck stood on end. He could not wait to meet the other members. Perhaps this was what it meant to be a friend, to share weal and woe together. The method to enter the 24th floor was quite complicated. Chen Ge stood at the corner of the elevator with his back facing Zhang Ya, and he took out the black phone. The elevator went up and down. Chen Ge swiped the screen and clicked on the notification. Solved the last obsession. Zhang Ya's affection level has reached uncontrollable affection mission. Spectres favored. Congratulations for completing Zhang Ya's favorability mission with the highest completion rate. Optional reward 1. Unlock the 3-star scenario, Western Zhujiang Private Academy. This scenario consists of White Valentine, Red Dancing Shoes, Cursed Love Letter, Girls' Dormitory, Crying Chair, Hanging Man, and Foul Odor. Quote. Warning. After selecting this scenario, the Red Spectre Zhang Ya will be restricted to Western Zhujiang's Private Academy scenario. Optional reward 2. Remove all the scenarios related to Zhang Ya, leaving only the Hanging Man and Foul Odor scenarios. Western Zhujiang's Private Academy will be downgraded to a 2-star scenario. However, Zhang Ya's movements will not be restricted. Quote. The information on the screen surprised Chen Ge. He did not expect Western Zhujiang's private school to be a 3-star scenario, and he did not expect Zhang Ya to be related to 5 of the scenarios. The third sick hall was given a 3-star rating by the black phone, probably because of the 10 patients and the monster behind the door, but Western Zhujiang's Private Academy was given a 3-star rating because of Zhang Ya. She's scarier than I thought. After consuming the third sick hall's Red Spectre's director and some monsters, Zhang Ya had become even stronger. Her resentment and hatred continued to grow, and the color of blood continued to spread. If I choose reward 1, I can unlock a complete 3-star scenario, but the price is that I won't be able to get any help from Zhang Ya outside of the haunted house. Chen Ge turned back to glance at Zhang Ya, and after some consideration, he chose reward 2. He was not afraid that if he chose reward 1, he would not be able to walk out of the elevator alive that night. He just felt like he was the only person that Zhang Ya could rely on. For someone who had suffered so much in life, if possible, he wanted to give her some warmth in death. He clicked on reward 2, and a new message appeared. Are you sure you want to choose reward 2? Yes. Congratulations for unlocking the 2-star scenario, Western Zhujiang's Private Academy. This scenario is a bloody heart reward scenario. There are no hidden missions and no security threats. Quote. No security threats. Doesn't that mean I can let the visitors in and let them explore the place freely? Since the black phone said that there were no security threats, then there should be no problem. This meant that he had gained an additional 2-star scenario, and Chen Ge was quite happy about it. Not long after he clicked on the previous message, another message arrived. Spectres favored. Congratulations for completing Zhang Ya's Bloody Heart reward mission with the highest completion rate. You have successfully triggered the 4-star scenario, School of the Afterlife. Warning. 4-star scenario is extremely dangerous. The trial mission for School of the Afterlife is made up of 8 side missions and 1 final mission. The mission will be valid for 3 months. You have now completed the first 7 side missions for Western Zhujiang's Private Academy and Muyang High School. After completing the 8th side mission, Immortality, you will unlock the final mission. Side Mission 8. Immortality. In the restricted area of the underground morgue, there is a group of immortals. Mission Venue. Western Zhejiang Medical University. Final mission. Unlocked. That was all the information in the black phone. After reading it, Chen Ge put the phone away. Every time a scenario increased by 1 star, the difficulty would multiply. When he was doing the trial mission at the third sick hall, he had already realized that with his own power, he would have died when he ran into the thin monster. If it wasn't for Zhang Ya, he wouldn't even have had the chance to enter the blood door. What the pen spirit said made sense. From another perspective, Zhang Ya was just the pillar of a 3-star scenario. The scarier Zhang Ya was, the harder the 3-star scenario was. I should stop thinking about the 4-star mission for now. There are already red specters in the 3-star mission, and 4-star scenarios might have even stronger specters. Chen Ge tried to understand that world, but the more he learned, the more he realized how ignorant he was. The time limit for School of the Afterlife is 3 months, so I still have time. My current priority is to deal with the Society of Strange Tales and complete the hidden mission at the third sick hall. The blood-red number on the monitor was glaring. When the number 24 lit up, the elevator doors opened to both sides. Wet blood dripped down the corridor, and there were new scratch marks on the walls. A faded scent of blood lingered in the air like something scary had just happened here. Chen Ge removed the cleaver that was tied to his calf, gripped it with a backhand grip, and hid it in his sleeve. Let's go in and take a look. A chill ran down his spine. Chen Ge did not turn around because he knew that Zhang Ya was behind him. The corridor was very quiet, and any sound could be heard clearly. When he was about a third of the way down, the sound of something being cut entered Chen Ge's ears. After taking a few more steps, Chen Ge confirmed that the sound came from the room where he had first met the Birdman. There are 10 seats beside the dining table, so they probably represent the first 10 patients. The Birdman is responsible for the miscellaneous items. What is his identity in the Society of Strange Tales? After giving it some thought, Chen Ge shook his head. There was no need to think about that. He was not there to investigate anything but to destroy this society made up of madmen. They are both 3-star scenarios, so Zhang Ya shouldn't be that much weaker than them. Stopping outside the room, Chen Ge looked at the scene behind the door, and his brows furrowed. A man who appeared to be wearing a birdman's mask was squatting in the corner with tools in his hands. Before him was an old man, and next to him was a mask. Chen Ge had seen the mask before when he was at the gathering. New number 1 had worn it before. What are you doing? Chen Ge blocked the door, and his sudden question scared the man. He could see the birdman's shoulders tremble. The man did not turn around and kept his back to Chen Ge. Everyone has left, so why are you still here? Aren't you going to serve dinner? I've only been gone for a while, and you've already finished. Chen Ge sighed with regret. Regardless of the reason, his plan might have to change. There was a small problem. One of them received a message from the president and left at the last minute. The Birdman still did not turn around. His upper body seemed to be frozen. His back was facing Chen Ge, and his face was facing the old man on the ground. A message from the guild leader. Chen Ge noticed that there was something strange about the man. He walked into the house and asked, "Can you tell me where they went?" "I don't know." The man paused and added, "I advise you not to come over. There's only one elevator at the end of the corridor, and I've never left the elevator. Is there another exit here?" Chen Ge got a lot of clues from the man's words. Now that the others had left, he could only get information from the Birdbeak man. "Someone will tell you this in the future. You can leave now." The birdman's movements were stiff, as if he was purposely not turning his face around. Chen Ge wasn't there to discuss things with him. After the Birdbeak man finished speaking, he didn't leave. Instead, he walked a few steps further in. "They've all left. Why are you still here? Have you been staying here all this time?" Chen Ge's questions came one after another. "I'm only responsible for cleaning and cooking." Interesting. Chen Ge had his suspicions about the Birdbeak man. He was free to stay on the 24th floor and was responsible for everything here. Could this man be the guild leader? Perhaps the other members had lied and the guild leader was not among them. Chen Ge wanted to prove this. If he asked the Birdbeak man, the man would definitely not tell him the truth, so he decided to use the most direct method. Regardless of whether he was the guild leader or not, if he disappeared forever, he would no longer be the guild leader. The bird beak man noticed that Chen Ge was still approaching, so he suddenly raised his voice. "Newbie, no matter what you've done outside, now that you're here, you'd better follow the rules of the Society of Strange Tales." The rules of the Society of Strange Tales. I only need to tell stories, what else is there to do? Chen Ge had already noticed that there was something wrong with the man, so he did not want to let him leave. You have to pay the price for seeing things that you shouldn't have. Now that the other members have left, there's only you and me on this floor. The bird beak man stood up, and at the same time, there was the sound of water dripping. Chen Ge looked at the lower half of the man's body. His pants were drenched in blood, and dark blood was dripping down his pants to the ground. I don't understand what you're trying to say. The other members have already left, that should be bad news for you. Chen Ge continued to approach as if he did not see the blood stain on the bird beak man's pants. As that's so, the bird beak man took a step to the side, revealing the old man's body with a terrified expression. Occasionally, there will be some newbies disappearing for no reason, but everyone has gotten used to it. He appeared to be talking to himself, but at the same time, it appeared like he wanted Chen Ge to hear him. After saying that, the bird beak man turned around. Compared to the strange tool in his hand and the blood stain on his upper body, the most eye-catching thing was his face. He was not even wearing a mask. The protruding beak that looked like a bird's beak was growing on his face, and the blood vessels that were unique to the monsters behind the door swam on his cheeks. This man was probably not human. I gave you a chance, but you didn't appreciate it. The bird beak man waved the strange tool in his hand, and it creaked noisily. From the first time I saw you, I wanted to do this, but there were too many people, so I couldn't find the chance. I didn't expect you to come back on your own. Things were not as Chen Ge expected. Initially, he thought he was dealing with a human. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have wasted so much time. Chen Ge stared at the bird beak man's face. For the monsters behind the door to survive outside the door, they had to attach themselves to a living person. The thing that wrapped around the bird beak man's head should be a monster that he had not seen before. Their relationship was similar to that of Shang-Qing and the Thin Shadow. The monsters behind the door would attach themselves to a living person, and the living person could control them by satisfying the monster's needs. The official members of the Society of Strange Tales are probably all possessed by monsters. This is a bit tricky. Will there be a red specter among them? Chen Ge stood where he was to think. The bird beak man thought that Chen Ge was scared out of his wits, and a cruel smile appeared on his face. He liked to watch people struggle, and that was one of the few things that he enjoyed here. Because of this, there were a lot of bloody scratches at the elevator door. He would always drag them into the abyss of despair when they had the last bit of hope. The Society of Strange Tales is not a place for charity. To gain salvation, you have to pay the price. The bird beak man grabbed the strange tool in his hand and charged at Chen Ge. The beak-like mouth released a shrill scream. Then his neck was curled up by the black hair, and his whole body was suspended in midair. His legs kicked furiously, and the blood vessels spread. His face was purplish from the effort. Chen Ge would not answer the birdman's question. When the black hair curled around the birdman's neck, his fate was sealed. When Zhongya made her move, she had never left anyone alive. At the third sick hall, to chase after the Thin Shadow, she had rushed into the world behind the door and torn apart the Red Spectre's director. Zhongya, who had turned into a baleful spectre, was the complete opposite of her personality when she was alive. Thankfully, she seemed to have feelings for Chen Ge. Chen Ge, who stood obediently at the door, pretended like he did not see anything. He picked up the strange tool that the birdman had tossed away and started to study it. Ah! A scream came from inside the room. The blood vessels that covered the birdman's face spread outward, morphing into a red bird that tried to fly out. It was very fast, and it reached the door in the blink of an eye. However, after it flew out, something even more despairing happened. When the birdman was talking, the black hair started to spread outward, and it had already sealed off this part of the corridor. The black hair swallowed the birdman and the blood bird. Moments later, the blood bird disappeared, and only a man was left lying on the ground. His eyes were dull, and his consciousness seemed to have been destroyed. After consuming the blood bird, Zhongya was still not satisfied. The black hair crawled into the rooms through the gaps. Finally, she found something, and without warning, she started to gather her black hair. Did you find something again? This was the base of the Society of Strange Tales, so there might be some important items hidden here. After the black hair returned, Zhongya tilted her head to study Chen Ge for a long time. Then, without saying anything, she crawled back into his shadow. Chen Ge's hair stood on end from Zhongya's stare. He waited until the blood in his shadow disappeared before he dared to take a deep breath. The affection level is rising too fast. Now Zhongya is unwilling to go back. If this continues, I will be accidentally killed by her sooner or later. Thinking back to Zhongya's gaze, Chen Ge's scalp went numb. The woman seemed to be seriously considering whether to make a move or not. I didn't realize that I was so popular with girls before. I haven't done anything yet, but my good impression of her is growing at an insane rate. If I encounter any problems in the future, it's best not to trouble Zhongya. Quote. Chen Ge walked to the birdman's side and looked at his face. After being possessed by the monster behind the door for so long, the man's face had completely deformed. I can't find any information based on his appearance. After leaving the room, Chen Ge came to the end of the corridor and pushed open the last door. The dining table was placed in the middle of the living room, but there was no one in the room. How did they leave? Where is the other passage? Quote. Holding the butcher knife, Chen Ge walked around the dining table. It was a very ordinary dining table, but each chair had a corresponding number, from 1 to 10. The chairperson is among the 10 of them. To be able to borrow the power of the ghost behind the door to create such an association, this person cannot be underestimated. Chen Ge stopped next to the chair for no. 10. When he entered the room, number 10 had said something to him. At the time, Chen Ge had been focused on calling Zhongya, so he had not noticed. Now that he thought about it, there was something wrong with no. 10. The first thing he told me was that he liked my mask. Did he purposely point out the mask to tell me something? Chen Ge was wearing Dr. Skullcracker's mask. Only those who had visited the haunted house would have seen it before. Could number 10 be a former visitor? When the other 9 gave up on me, number 10 did not say anything. In that situation, not saying anything meant that he supported me. He wouldn't risk offending the other 9 to save a stranger. There were many other strange things. For example, when the food was being served, number 10 suddenly told the 3 newcomers that they could leave. Combined with everything that had happened earlier, he probably said that specifically for Chen Ge. Is there something wrong with the meal given to the newcomers? Chen Ge looked at No 10's chair, and he recalled No 10's every movement. The other people's hands were hidden inside the black robe, but No 10's hands were placed under the table. Squatting down, Chen Ge looked under the table. Right in front of seat number 10, there were a few crooked words carved out with fingernails. Chen Ge used the flashlight on his phone to study it for a long time before he recognized the words. Linjiang New Schistosomiasis Control Station. The name sounded familiar. He thought about it, and his eyes widened. There were 4 letters inside the 3rd Sick Hall's director's cupboard, and one of them had the address of Linjiang New Schistosomiasis Control Station. The letter was written by the 3rd Sick Hall's director to Dr. Chen, so this number 10 is Dr. Chen. All the clues seemed to be connected together, but it felt like they couldn't corroborate each other. It felt like the most crucial point was missing. This is the first time I've taken the mask out of New Century Park. He has seen my mask before, so he should be a visitor or park worker. Who could have appeared in the Society of Strange Tales between the time I obtained the mask and now? Quote. The body was covered by the black robe, and No 10's voice sounded weird. He was probably using a fake voice, which made it difficult for Chen Ge to identify the man. He could only confirm that it was a man. Could it be the patient from the 3rd Sick Hall who has recognized me? Is he trying to trick me? Quote. The people from the Society of Strange Tales were not normal, and they included Wu Fei and the devil, the 2 most troublesome opponents. Captain Yan showed me the picture. The patient from the 3rd Sick Hall has been following me. They also saw the picture of me entering New Century Park on the phone of Shu Tong and the patient with phantom limb syndrome. This group of madmen knows I'm at New Century Park, so they've probably disguised themselves as visitors to enter my haunted house, so it's normal for them to have seen my mask. The letter with the address of Linjiang New Schistosomiasis Control Station was written by the old director. To survive, the Red Spectre director has joined forces with the patient, so it makes sense that the patient would know the address. The reason why he has been helping me is probably because he has sensed danger. He's not helping me, he's helping the entire association. Quote. There's another key point. The Birdman said earlier that one of the members received the chairman's message and decided to leave. I just left, and they left through a tunnel that I don't know about. This can't be a coincidence. With that thought in mind, Chen Ge's eyes darkened. He looked at the carvings under the table, suspecting that this was a trap. He had to be careful. The people who escaped from the third sick hall were all madmen, and he could not use a normal person's logic to predict their actions. He noticed something was wrong the moment he arrived and reacted immediately to control the situation. If this number 10 is not someone I know, then he's probably the chairman of the Society of Strange Tales. Number 10 could be someone who was helping Chen Ge, or he could be a patient in disguise. To find the answer, he had to go to Linjiang New Schistosomiasis Control Station in person. After making sure he had not missed anything, Chen Ge walked out from the room, walked down the long corridor, and returned to the elevator. There have to be other secrets behind those closed doors. Perhaps the secret tunnel that the society members used to leave is hidden among them. Chen Ge regretted not bringing the hammer with him, or else he would have smashed down all the doors. I'll learn from this lesson and be more careful next time. Entering the elevator, Chen Ge watched the numbers change, and his nerves finally relaxed. He tied the cleaver to his calf, removed the mask, and took a deep breath. The elevator opened on the first floor. Before Chen Ge walked out, he heard someone talking outside. The voice was stern. How did he get in here? I'm asking you how he got in here. Quote. Manager Huang, I really have no idea why he would appear in this building. Even the murderer has snuck in. You still don't know. Quote. I'm sorry. I'm paying you to protect the tenants. I'm not here to listen to your apology. How many things have happened in the past few days? Do the math yourself. Quote. Chen Ge looked outside the elevator, and Zhu Shu, who he had left in the corner, had disappeared. Where is she? Chen Ge looked down the corridor. Ji Yu Feiyu was in his security uniform, holding his phone with his head lowered. Standing across from him was a young man who looked gentle but had a bad temper. Xiao Ji Yu, what's going on? Chen Ge walked over. Who are you? The middle-aged man turned to Chen Ge. You don't look familiar. You're not one of the tenants here, right? Then he glared at Ji Yu Feiyu. He's your friend. There was a clear rule that strangers were not allowed to enter the residential area after midnight. Ji Yu Feiyu knew that he had made another mistake. He took off his cap and nodded. Manager Huang. The police siren came from outside the building, and a middle-aged man in casual clothes walked in. That's my friend. Seeing the man, Chen Ge was surprised. Inspector Li. When you came out from the police station, I knew something was wrong with you, but I didn't expect you to be so capable. That guy was so well hidden, but you still managed to find him. Inspector Li pointed at the entrance of the third building. Zhu Shu was lying unconscious on the ground. You've been following me since I came out of the police station. Chen Ge did not notice at all. Now that he thought about it, he felt a little scared. I've been a police officer for almost 20 years. It would be strange if you found out when you were defenseless. Inspector Li then told Manager Huang, you don't have to blame this young man, he did a good job. This time, the criminal is very cunning and has a strong sense of anti-reconnaissance. Even our undercover officers failed once, so it's normal that he didn't notice. Even the plainclothes officer failed. Manager Huang looked at Chen Ge and quickly apologized. His expression changed like the flipping of a book. Then, you're also a police officer, right? Thank you for your hard work, officer comrade. Quote. Chen Ge ignored him and looked at Inspector Li guiltily. You've been waiting outside the building. Of course. I waited for you at the entrance of New Century Park for 1.5 hours before following you to Fanghua Apartments. I've been waiting outside the building until now. Inspector Lee moved his arms. When I saw you found the suspect, I prepared to come over, but you took the elevator back up. Uncle Lee, what you're doing is very dangerous. If not for the fact that I'm afraid you'll do something stupid, do you think I would have the time to care about you? Inspector Lee lowered his voice and pulled Chen Ge to the side. Zhu Shu seems to have been traumatized by something. Was he like this when you saw him? Inspector Lee's tone was weird. Chen Ge looked at Inspector Lee's expression, and it dawned on him. When I saw him, he was already like this. The only reason I left him in the stairwell was so that I could go upstairs to investigate the reason. Inspector Lee nodded. This is very strange. Not long after Zhu Shu was sent into the police car, an ambulance arrived, and it also stopped outside the third building. The people in the room looked at each other. Which one of you called the ambulance? No one admitted to it. After a while, the number on the elevator screen suddenly changed until it stopped on the 13th floor. The tenants rarely use the elevator at night, so something must have happened. Manager Huang and Jiu Feiyu ran to the elevator door at the same time. Soon, the doors opened, and a middle-aged man carrying an old lady rushed out. Doctor. Quote. The middle-aged man's mother seemed to have fainted due to a sudden illness. Initially, Chen Ge did not think much of it, but when he saw the old lady's face, shock crossed his eyes. This old lady was the old lady who had been waiting to take the elevator down from the 13th floor. When she had looked into the elevator, she had grumbled, "Why are there so many people taking the elevator at night? It's so crowded." The old lady's appearance was completely different from what Chen Ge had seen. He could not tell whether it was the old lady or the old lady's soul that had come down the stairs. She didn't take the elevator, so she should be able to survive this. After the ambulance left, it was time for Chen Ge to leave, but before that, he had something to do. Xiao Ji, how much do they earn in a month as a night guard? About 3,000 RMB. You're quite brave and have a good personality. If you don't want to work as a security guard or have nowhere else to go, you can come find me at Western Zhujiang's New Century Park. Chen Ge raised his phone. Call me then. This time, Jiu Feiyu was obviously moved. Okay. After saying goodbye to Inspector Lee, Chen Ge rushed back to New Century Park. He could finally relax after returning to his haunted house. This place is much more comfortable. He jotted down the things that he needed to pay attention to, memorized them, and burned them all. Tomorrow is a new beginning. After the opening hours, if I have time, I can go to Linjiang's schistosomiasis control station to take a look in the morning. It was already very late. Chen Ge fed the white cat some cat food and prepared to go to sleep, but before he could do so, his phone rang again. As this Inspector Lee, Chen Ge thought it was Zhu Shu again, but when he answered the call, he realized it was from Captain Yan. Sorry to disturb you, Chen Ge. We have something to confirm with you. Captain Yan was very polite, and Chen Ge did not want to reject him. Speak, but you'd better be quick. I've already sent you the picture. You can take a look. We discovered this when we were looking at the surveillance around Heiming Apartments. After the message was accepted, Chen Ge clicked open the picture. It was a picture taken from the surveillance, and it had been sharpened. There was a man in a hoodie in the picture. He was holding the phone in his right hand like he was talking to someone, and his left hand was holding a flyer for Chen Ge's haunted house. There were cigarette scars and small wounds on the back of his hand. Cigarette scar. Chen Ge remembered the man who sat on the right side of the Society of Strange Tales' table. There were cigarette scars on the fingers that were exposed outside the black robe. We've checked all the surveillance within 500 meters of the incident for 12 hours, and we didn't find anyone too suspicious. This is the only one that is a bit out of place. Captain Yan's voice was filled with confusion. He used the hoodie to cover his face, and the phone in his hand was dark. It looked like he was talking on the phone, but he was actually observing his surroundings. There's one thing that I don't understand. Why would he have your haunted house's flyer? My haunted house doesn't have many employees, and I've never distributed flyers outside the park. Therefore, it's certain that he or his friend has entered New Century Park and appeared outside my haunted house. Quote. Do you have any impression of this person? There are many scenarios inside the haunted house, and I'm only responsible for one of them, so I can't give you an accurate answer. Chen Ge was already thinking about this man with the cigarette scar. Captain Yan, after you find the suspect, you'll investigate him immediately. You should have found something, right? Captain Yan's voice was hoarse, probably because he had not rested for a long time. We've investigated him. He is the program director of a private radio station. He has no criminal record and is the kind of successful man who cares about his family. He has nothing to do with murder. A radio station's program director. That sounds impressive. Quote, it's just a radio station that specializes in midnight programs. Its influence has only grown in the past 2 years. Most of its listeners are young people who are curious and those who have nothing better to do at night. Captain Yan's words woke Chen Ge up. There was only one relatively good midnight radio station in Zhujiang, and that was the one that Lychee, the 12th member of the Society of Strange Tales, was on. Ghost Talk. The station used to focus on emotional therapy, but due to the dwindling number of listeners, they had to change. Who would have thought that Ghost Talk's first broadcast would break the record of the private radio station? Captain Yan, is this radio station *T you're talking about? Yes, that's it. You've listened to it before. I've listened to it a few times. There's a podcaster called Lychee who has a very nice voice. Chen Ge's mind raced. The man in the sweater, who was suspected to be a member of Association Number 5, was the program director of the radio station, and Lychee was his announcer. Was it possible that he was the one who had sent out the flyer for the Society of Strange Tales? If that was the case, Chen Ge now knew the identities of 2 members of the Society of Strange Tales. I have no idea why he went to Haiming Apartments. To avoid alerting him, I can only investigate from the outside. Captain Yan sounded tired. It's been a busy time. You have to be careful. If there are any clues, remember to inform us. Captain Yan gave a few more orders before hanging up. Chen Ge sat by the bed and used his phone to search for the Ghost Talk station. The host that night was indeed not Lychee but someone else. Should I strike first to gain the upper hand? Kill them one by one. Quote, at around 6 a.m., just as the sun rose, Chen Ge was woken up by the vibration of his phone. He searched inside his clothes for a long time before he realized that it was the black phone that had received a message. 2-star scenario Western Zhujiang's private academy has failed to unlock. Insufficient space at the haunted house. Please proceed with second expansion. Quote, how is that possible? Most of the underground parking lot is still unused. Chen Ge had thought that there would be a new scenario to use after he woke up, but he did not expect something like this to happen. He put on his clothes and ran out of the haunted house to the entrance of New Century Park. It had been 1 or 2 years since anyone had visited this place. To prevent visitors from accidentally entering, the park had even used trash to block the 2 exits of the parking lot. Jumping over the trash, Chen Ge entered the underground parking lot. New Century Park had spent a lot of money to build this parking lot, and that was when the park was at its peak. Chen Ge walked for a long time before he saw a mottled cement wall. The wall was connected to the top of the parking lot, separating the parking lot from the scenario. There's still 2/3 of the place unused. Why does it say there's insufficient space? Could it be that one expansion can only add 3 more scenarios? Before the first expansion, Chen Ge's haunted house had 3 scenarios. After the first expansion, he had added the 3rd sick hall, the Threes room, and Muyang High School. Chen Ge guessed that only 3 scenarios could be added after each expansion, and he would have to continue to expand if he wanted to add more scenarios. Without realizing it, I already have 6 scenarios, but it still feels like it's not enough. The sun slowly rose, and a ray of sunlight shone into the underground parking lot through the gap above the trash. Chen Ge discovered something interesting. The haunted house was built in places where the sun did not reach, and it was unclear whether the black phone would lose its function under the sun or it was purposely avoiding the sun. It's better for the haunted house to be completely sealed off. Today, I'll get someone to seal off the 2 exits of the underground parking lot. That way, I'll feel better. Chen Ge took out the black phone and found the expansion option. The conditions for the second expansion were that the monthly visitor count had to exceed 1,000 and have a 70% positive rating. He had already fulfilled the conditions a few days ago, but at the time, he had thought the underground parking lot was big enough, so he had not considered it. Would you like to proceed with the second expansion? After the expansion, there's a chance to obtain a building with a special function. Quote. Yes. After clicking yes, there was no change to the underground parking lot. I'll probably have to wait until after midnight again. Chen Ge pocketed the black phone and returned the way he had come. He was quite excited about the new building, but unfortunately, he would have to wait until the next day before the expansion could be completed. The theme park opened at 9 a.m., and it was worth noting that Gu Feiyu had come to visit. At that moment, Chen Ge was running out of manpower. Xiao Jiyu was very brave. Chen Ge wanted to put him in charge of the murder by midnight scenario, but before that, he needed to familiarize himself with the haunted house. Chen Ge was very friendly and had Gu Feiyu accompany the visitors to visit the haunted house. After experiencing 3 scenarios, Gu Feiyu, whose legs were like jelly, insisted on leaving no matter what. Chen Ge finally managed to persuade him to stay and patiently told him that scaring someone and being scared were 2 completely different experiences. Gu Feiyu, who was afraid of being scammed, refused to enter the haunted house again. After some discussion, Xiao Jiyu decided to come back the next day. After sending Gu Feiyu away, Chen Ge found the kid more and more interesting. The reason he valued Gu Feiyu was not because of his abilities, but because he was courageous, loyal, and had a straightforward personality. He had saved Gu Feiyu's life before, and with Gu Feiyu's personality, even if he saw something inside the haunted house in the future, he would help him keep it a secret. During lunch, Director Luo personally walked around the haunted house. When he saw the resting hall filled with visitors, he was very satisfied. Even when you're resting, there are still so many visitors waiting for you. This is impressive. Director Luo sighed. Several weeks ago, the haunted house had been the most deserted place at the theme park, but now, it had become the park's symbol and lifesaver. Director Luo, why are you here? Chen Ge held the lunch that Xu Wan had brought back with one hand, and his other hand was holding a pen. I have 2 pieces of good news for you. Director Luo looked at the simple resting hall and passed the document to Chen Ge. I haven't heard good news for a long time. Chen Ge opened the document with a smile. It was the layout of the resting hall that he had drawn, but underneath the rough design, there was a detailed design that was filled with annotations. This is, even though the theme park is not as glorious as before, we can still afford this amount of money. Director Luo seemed to be in a good mood. You can take a look at the revised plan and tell me if you need anything. Chen Ge put down his work and looked through it. He was very satisfied with Director Luo's revised plan. It was much better than his own, and it was more thorough. Director Luo, what's the other good news? Chen Ge raised his head, and he was curious. From tomorrow onward, the ticket price will be lowered by 60 RMB. At the same time, we'll introduce discounts for group tours and shared recommendations. Director Luo finally made his decision. The futuristic theme park had given him too much pressure. Lowering the ticket price was a marketing strategy and an indirect concession. That much. The ticket price had been increasing for the past few years, and this was the first time that it had been lowered. Lowering the price now is better than being forced to do so later. Director Luo saw through the situation. If the park lowers the ticket price, it's time for your haunted house to raise the price. After discussing with the other park managers, I think a single ticket price of 50 is more reasonable. Isn't 50 too expensive? Chen Ge's haunted house was inherited from his parents, and the ticket prices had not changed over the years. As long as the quality of your service is up to par, 50 is the most reasonable price. Now that the park's ticket prices have been reduced, many visitors who don't want to waste their money should be tempted. I'm afraid you'll be very busy in the next few days. Director Luo was very confident. The price has more than doubled. I'm afraid that it will cause a rebellious mood among the tourists. There's no way to earn all the money, so it's better to keep it flowing. Chen Ge treated the haunted house as his own home. Now that things were starting to improve, if the number of visitors decreased, the ghosts at the haunted house would be unhappy. I've already thought about it. Director Luo took the document from Chen Ge's hands and flipped to the last few pages. It was no longer about the architectural design but about the theme park's promotion plan. In the future, the theme park will start to advertise and promote on a large scale. We need to be ahead of them and use this opportunity to do our best to promote the theme park. The main selling points are the low ticket prices and your haunted house. Quote, the theme park and my haunted house are bundled together for promotion. At New Century Park, only your haunted house can be used as a selling point. Director Luo said something that hurt Chen Ge's heart. If the effect is not good, this will be our last promotion. Chen Ge instantly felt like he had a heavy responsibility. He was shouldering the rise and fall of a theme park. Don't give yourself too much pressure. To increase the attraction of the haunted house and have more visitors take the first step, I will help you one more time. Director Luo had decided to go all out this time. He wanted to make a change. It's better for me to design the haunted house. You guys don't know anything else. Haunted house was Chen Ge's territory. There were too many secrets hidden there, and he would not allow others to interfere. I don't know how to design a haunted house, but I do know how to motivate the visitors. Director Luo seemed to have thought of everything. I heard from OL. Shu that when you suggested the terror level system, you used 20,000 as the reward. Yes, I did. At the time, Chen Ge had no choice. The reason he suggested the terror level system was for the sake of the visitors. A newbie entering a 3-star scenario without any preparation could easily get scared. Well done, but 20,000 is a little too small. Director Luo pointed at the empty space in front of the haunted house. Tomorrow, I will put up an eye-catching banner here. The first visitor to clear all the scenarios of your haunted house will receive 200,000 cash reward. 200,000. Honestly, Mr. Chen's bank account did not even have more than 50,000. Isn't that too much? What if someone really clears all the scenarios? Quote. Director Luo took one step forward and lowered his voice. This was completely different from his earlier confident and authoritative self. Therefore, I need you to design a game that is impossible to clear. Let me give you a hint. If someone clears all the scenarios in 1 week, they will take the 200,000. Then I will only pay half of the money, and you can decide the rest. Quote. Isn't that asking me to cheat? Chen Ge was troubled. How can you think like that? We're a theme park, and the purpose of our existence is to make the visitors happy. Will they be happy when they find out that the first person to clear the haunted house will receive 200,000 cash reward? Director Luo persuaded Chen Ge patiently. Of course they will, visiting the haunted house and getting the reward. But when they find out that the 200,000 has been taken by someone else, will they still be happy? If they don't take the money themselves, they might be disappointed. Therefore, for all the visitors to be happy, you have to design a game that is impossible to clear. Director Luo was satisfied with Chen Ge's attitude. Xiao Chen, I know you're smart, so don't disappoint me. If this was before, 200,000 was nothing for Director Luo, but things were different now. Chen Ge had heard from Shu that Director Luo had mortgaged his house to the bank to keep the park running. Don't worry, Director Luo. Other than myself, no one will be able to complete my haunted house. It is a game that is impossible to clear. Quote. Then I'll leave it to you. We'll start the promotion tomorrow. Director Luo looked at the crowd of visitors and strode away like he was several years younger. This is such a good news. It seems like as long as I help a baleful specter or kill the monsters inside the door, my luck will improve. Tomorrow, the theme park would start a large-scale promotion for his haunted house, and this was a rare opportunity for Chen Ge. Director Luo had placed all his hope on him, and he naturally did not want to disappoint him. After the expansion of the haunted house is completed tonight, Western Zhujiang's private academy should be unlocked. A new 2-star scenario will be helpful for my plan tomorrow. After the second expansion, Chen Ge had the possibility of obtaining a special building, and that was something he looked forward to. The midnight ticket office can help me attract special visitors. I wonder what kind of function the new building will have. After lunch, he returned to business. At 3 p.m., the recorder that Chen Ge had ordered online finally arrived. This way, he could summon Shu Yin to help him at any time. It feels weird to carry a recorder on a mission, but at least it's better than carrying a tape recorder. The haunted house closed at 6:30 p.m. There were too many visitors, and Chen Ge's closing time was getting later and later. Seeing the sky darkening, Chen Ge gave up on the idea of going to Linjiang New Schistosomiasis Control Station. That place was far from Western Zhujiang's haunted house, and since he could not confirm No Ten's identity, he did not want to act rashly. After cleaning up, Chen Ge entered the underground scenario. Tian Tang Medical School's haunted house is very interactive, and that is something that my haunted house can improve. If I add some mystery-solving elements, the visitors will like it even more. Chen Ge busied himself inside the haunted house. He checked all the scare points and only left at 10 p.m. Xu Wan will be responsible for the Minghan scenario, and I'll be responsible for Muyang High School and the Third Sick Hall. I still need someone to act as the murderer for Murder by Midnight. There were not many people that Chen Ge could trust completely. Xu Shu was too old, and his personality was not that of a murderer, so in comparison, Ji Yu Feiyu was more suitable. The kid doesn't have much experience, but with the help of Xiao Xiao's family in Murder by Midnight, it shouldn't be that bad. Chen Ge was worried that Ji Yu Feiyu might be scared by Xiao Xiao's family as well. There are too few outstanding employees. I'm more comfortable using ghosts. Returning to the staff break room, he looked through the information on his phone. The pictures that Captain Yan had sent him made him feel uneasy. The Society of Strange Tales has their eyes on me. If they sneak into the crowd of visitors and cause trouble at the most crucial moment, Director Luo and my plan will be ruined. I should deal with them as soon as possible. The mental patients at the Third Sick Hall could do anything. There were so many visitors, and it was impossible for Chen Ge to identify them one by one. The only way to prevent this from happening was to bring those lunatics to justice in advance. Number 12 is a podcast host for the Nonsense segment, and number 5 is the program director for Midnight Radio. Should we start with the two of them? Chen Ge used his phone to search for the Ghost Talk radio station. There was a message on the homepage that caught his attention. Usually, Ghost Story would be broadcasted at midnight, but today, it was broadcasted an hour earlier. The reason given by the program team was that Lychee had taken leave the previous day, so they wanted to give the listeners an extra hour. That's a good reason. Initially, Chen Ge did not think much of it, but when he saw the trailer, he realized that something was wrong. The first 5 stories that Lychee was going to tell that night were all related to taxis. Today's the taxi special. Chen Ge calculated the time. The taxi-related stories were all set before midnight, and it felt like it was purposely arranged. Turning on the radio, Chen Ge lay in bed to rest. At 10:55 a.m., the woman's beautiful voice came from the radio. We met at night and parted before dawn. We parted at this moment and reunited the next. Hello, everyone, I'm Midnight's podcast host, Lychee. The woman's voice was beautiful. She did not try to show off, just the way she spoke made the listeners feel comfortable. Born with a beautiful voice, such a shame. Chen Ge leaned on his arm and continued to listen. Zhujiang has a long history, and the old city still has many old buildings. One of them is called Waiwa Alley, but it's famous not because of its history but because of a few strange things that have happened there. It's called Waiwa Alley, but there isn't a single Waiwa tree in the alley. The older generation of Zhujiang can't explain why they gave it such a name. The woman's story continued. Her style was hard to imitate. The beginning was simple, like she was weaving a net, and the listeners would be dragged into it without knowing it. Then, the net would tighten and all the scare points would explode. Lychee's first story happened at Waiwa Alley. A driver picked up a customer near Waiwa Alley in the middle of the night. The customer said that she had left something somewhere and wanted the driver to take her back. After giving a rough location, the driver drove the customer into the car, but the customer was very weird. She changed the location several times and said that the thing was not there. Just as the driver's patience was about to run out, the customer gave the last location, the bus stop next to the crematorium. The story had a weird ending. The customer finally found the thing that she had lost there. It crawled into the driver's body and drove away, and the driver took her place and was locked inside the missing urn. The story is not bad. The main thing is that Lychee told it like it was real. After listening to that, Chen Ge suddenly realized a problem. Could Lychee's story be real? The taxi driver's story happened in Zhujiang, and Waiwa Alley did exist. Could she have heard her story from other members of the Society of Strange Tales? Lychee started her second story. It also happened at Waiwa Alley, and the main character was also the driver. Something's not right. Chen Ge had talked to Captain Yan on the phone before, and the latter had given him a piece of information. Most of the cases related to the Society of Strange Tales happened on Wednesdays. That day seemed to have a special meaning for them. Today's ghost story started 1 hour earlier. Before midnight, it's still considered a Wednesday. Are they planning to make their move today? After listening to Lychee's second story, Chen Ge felt even more suspicious. In her stories, the ghosts were reborn, and the innocent people were sacrificed. Wai Wa Ali, taxi driver. Chen Ge thought about it and put on his jacket. A human life is at stake. I should go take a look. Perhaps I'll find something unexpected. He placed the recorder, tape, and ballpoint pen into his backpack and rushed out of the staff break room. Carrying the hammer does make me feel safer. Chen Ge grabbed his backpack and left the haunted house. Lychee's ghost story continued, and she was already at the third story. She told this story in great detail like she had experienced it herself. The scariest thing was that the details of this story were similar to the first story. In other words, in the third story, the driver who drove at midnight was the unlucky man who was replaced by the ghost. The more I hear about it, the more it sounds like the style of the Society of Strange Tales. Chen Ge waited for a long time at the park entrance before a taxi arrived. It was already 11:30 p.m. I should be able to make it in time. Chen Ge opened the door, and before he got in, he heard a popular DJ from several years ago. The taxi did not have the air conditioning on, and the driver was a middle-aged man. His arms were pressed against the window, and his head swayed to the rhythm. How come this person looks so familiar? Chen Ge looked at the man's face, and it took him a long time to remember. When he went to Western Zhejiang's private academy to complete the Bloody Heart mission from Zhongya, it was this driver who dropped him off. At the time, when he was taking out his phone, he had accidentally dropped the fruit knife, and the driver had mistaken him for a carjacking. He had even written on the billboard on the roof of the car, "I have been hijacked, please call the police." What a coincidence, perhaps this was fate. Where are we going? Chen Ge was afraid that the driver would refuse to take him, so he blocked his nose with his hand and got into the car. He closed the door and said, "Wai Wa Ali in the old city. I'm in a hurry, so please hurry." Wai Wa Ali. The driver lowered the music in the car and hesitated like he was in a dilemma. Is there a problem? Does it cost more to go to the old city? Quote, even though that place is not far from here, I heard it's haunted. A taxi driver once ran into a ghost there. What era are you living in? You still believe things like that? Chen Ge did not blush. Hurry up and drive, I'm in a hurry. Sometimes, you really have to believe it. A few weeks ago, I encountered a strange thing. The driver started the car, and he seemed to be reminded of some bad memories. In the middle of the night, a man asked me to drive him to an abandoned school in the countryside. I swear to God, I took him there without thinking, and guess what happened? What happened? We're almost there. The man told me he was going to the abandoned campus for a date. Do you know how I felt? My scalp is about to explode after dragging a psychopath for half the night. Quote, the more the driver spoke, the more uncomfortable he became. The next day, I had a fever. It was really strange. I quickly asked my wife to find a half immortal and ask for some talismans for me. It took me a whole week before I dared to continue burning the midnight oil. Quote, is it that scary? Chen Ge was embarrassed. He felt like he had experienced something completely different from other people. Don't doubt me, I'm telling the truth. At the time, the young man was about your age, and it was normal for him to look clean, but who would have known? The driver glanced at Chen Ge through the rearview mirror, and then a strange feeling rose in his heart. A chill crawled up his legs to his shoulders. We've never met before, so why does it feel like we've met before? The color on his face slowly faded, and he asked probingly, brother, have we met before? Chen Ge guessed that the man had recognized him. Sorry for troubling you at Western Zhejiang's private academy. I didn't expect it to cause you so much trouble. I'm sorry. The middle-aged driver's face froze. He pulled out the talismans that were stuck to his shirt and tore them into pieces. Actually, I recognized you when you got on the bus. I was just joking with you. Please don't take my words to heart. I won't. Brother, how do I address you? I work at the theme park. We can be friends in the future. It was fate that Chen Ge had met this man twice. He did not know whether Fang Xin liked him or not, but he did like the man's optimistic attitude. The driver looked at the dark and empty theme park behind him, and his Adam's apple trembled. My surname is Zhang. The two chatted for a while. The driver was still wary of Chen Ge. Like a lion trapped in a cage with a herbivore, the veins on his hands that gripped the steering wheel were visible. Seeing this, Chen Ge sighed. It seemed like that night had left a deep psychological scar on the driver. Seeing the man's lack of interest, Chen Ge did not disturb him. He focused on Lychee's ghost story. He wanted to find information related to the Society of Strange Tales. Creepy music played inside the car. Lychee's ghost story happened at Waiwa Alley, and the main characters were all taxi drivers. This caused the man in the driver's seat to break out in cold sweat. He forced himself not to listen and focused on driving. When there were only 19 minutes left until midnight, the taxi drove into the old city. When it was about 10 meters away from Waiwa Alley, the driver stopped the car and refused to move forward no matter what. Chen Ge felt sorry for this brother and hurried out of the car. Just as he closed the door, the taxi turned around and sped up without any hesitation. Am I that scary? This old brother is too timid. Chen Ge looked at the taxi that disappeared into the distance. The driver stopped about 50 meters away. It appeared like someone was waving at him from another alley. Soon, someone jumped out from the alley, opened the door, and got into the car. The driver did not want to stay there any longer. After the door was closed, he left like he was running for his life. Someone happened to be calling for a taxi. Chen Ge thought back to every movement of the person that came out from the alley. The distance was far, and the light was dim, so he could not see clearly. No, wait, the person who came out from the alley. Chen Ge's pupils shrank. He appeared to be running backward. Chen Ge pocketed the phone, and then Lychee started to tell the fifth ghost story related to the taxi driver. He ran out of the alley, and the taxi was already far away. I have to find him. Chen Ge rushed into the road. He did not care whether there was a passenger in the taxi or not. He stopped them directly. You taxi drivers should have an internal chat group. Help me find someone, quick. His life might be in danger. Quote. The driver was quite spooked by Chen Ge. Following Chen Ge's description, he easily contacted the driver with the surname Zhang. Lao Zhang, where are you now?